All right, let's talk triggers. Triggers are fundamental to workflows. They are the entry point for your workflow. They decide how your workflow gets kicked off. So let's walk through the triggers here. The first one is an integration app trigger. So these are for events. For example, anytime a new Gmail comes in, the Gmail connection will pull for this event when a new email comes and then trigger the workflow. So we have a few app events for a few of our connections here that could be used. The other one is a schedule trigger. This one's really simple. Just basically, you can have your workflow run daily, weekly, monthly, or every 15 minutes. I have an example here where I have a GitHub dashboard refresh every 15 minutes. My workflow is called every 15 minutes, fetches information from GitHub, and then builds this dashboard just so my team has the most updated information available. The next one is an API endpoint trigger. This one I want to go through in a little bit of depth. So API trigger, almost kind of like a webhook. You can call this from any application. You can call it from one of your agents. You can call it from anywhere, from the terminal as a curl command. So you can always add triggers from the node option list here. But I usually just like to have the agent do everything just to make sure everything gets connected correctly. Can you create an API trigger for this with an input message? So the agent's going to go ahead and create an API trigger for me. And I also wanted it to create some inputs so we can test that out. It's going to ask me to confirm a few things. Looks good. Create API trigger. So now I'll go ahead and just publish this, and we can see that live trigger should get enabled for me to use if desired. So we can see here now I have two endpoints I can call. If I use this one, then it's always going to use the latest published release or latest published version. Whereas if I want to do some testing and before publishing, then I could use this endpoint and it'll always grab the latest modifications or state that the workflow is in. Okay, I've published my workflow here and I want to test this. The quickest way to test this is by copying this curl command here. And then I can just quickly paste this into my terminal and then let that run. So this is essentially calling the Pinkfish workflow. I had my input here, hello world, and it's giving me a bunch of information back, and that's because I didn't specify a designated output. So right now it's just kind of giving me everything in the workflow, which most AI and agent can process just fine. But if I want it to be nice and brief, then I can say, okay, just this output I want back. So again, after making that change, when I call this workflow, it should just give me that designated output back. There we have hello world. So that's a quick check that my API endpoint trigger is working and calling my workflow. The last trigger type is an email trigger type. And I set up a workflow here to give us an example of what would it look like running this and what kind of information you can pass through. So I have here my email trigger, and you can see it gives you a designated email address that you can always email to trigger this workflow. So we'll test this out. I have my draft email target here. My workflow just looks for a CSV as an attachment and shows that to me. So I can give it the designated email address, upload the attachment. So in practice, you could upload any PDF, CSVs, anything, any attachment you want, and have your workflow process that. Now I can jump over to the monitor and wait for this to come in. All right, it's done running. We see if I go and look at the run summary, I can see all the information that gets sent from this email, body, attachments, who it's from, subject line, etc. And then my workflow just goes through, checks for a CSV, and then shows me the CSV results of this. So that covers most of the triggers we have here. Interfaces are also a trigger type, which we cover in another video, so be sure to check that out. It's pretty much a manual trigger by end users who want to manually trigger a workflow, but maybe pass in some input. We also have a lot of cool triggers for resources as well. So for any resource type, say you have a database, if you edit it and go to the advanced section, we have event triggers here. So you could do something like on create, anytime a new database item gets added to this database, trigger this workflow. Or on edit, do this, or on delete, do this. So there's a lot of cool use cases you could have there if you're using our Pinkfish resources, such as database, file store, or knowledge base. And that covers triggers.